In today's video, we're going to have a little word about the right to defend yourself and the rules of engagement. Stay tuned. In the book I wrote back in 2010, Elements of Wisdom, still available from Amazon, and there'll be a link in the description if you're interested. I say a little something about self-defense. And to paraphrase myself, what I basically say is the right to defend yourself comes with the responsibility of knowing how to. Now, this video is not going to teach you how to hurt somebody. What it is going to teach you, however, are something called the rules of engagement. Now, I spent roughly half my working life involved in enforcing the law in both the public and private sectors, both as a practitioner and as an instructor, and so I have more than a passing familiarity with the subject. The rules of engagement are designed to make sure that the level of force that you use is appropriate for the context of the situation that you find yourself in to protect either yourself or others. Because if you use an inappropriate level of force, if you are using excessive force, you might be the one to spend time in a jail cell. Now, there are two ways of looking at it, and I'll tell you both. It's basically what I've lived by for most of my career, involved in what we might euphemistically refer to as the violence industry. You have minimum force, which is what they taught us when I was in the police academy, which is using the least amount of force necessary to achieve the goal. And you have what is normally used as actually which is the written law here in the UK, force must be reasonable and necessary. So if we combine these two together, we have a set of rules that we can live by that are both moral and are going to keep us out of jail, because going to jail is unfun. So the least amount of force necessary. Well, what does that mean? It means that if you are once you have subdued an opponent, for example, if you continue, for example, if you have grabbed someone and they're not resisting and you start punching them, you're not using minimum force. And if you're not using minimum force, by definition, you're using excessive force. The British law really is probably the best guiding light for it, to be fair. Because what it says is that you should use a level of force which a reasonable person would understand that under the circumstances was necessary. So it should be reasonable, and it's reasonable because it is necessary, and it must be proportionate. Somebody punches you, you don't get to shoot them. Someone pulls out a knife, you don't get to bring out an atomic bomb. That's an exaggeration, but you get the idea, hopefully. In other words, if you are, or someone else is, in imminent danger, if you fear for your safety, or indeed if you fear for your life, or the safety or life of another, because some individual is behaving in a manner which appears to be dangerous, likely to cause injury and or perhaps even death, then it is reasonable for you to use necessary force. If we say that minimum force is what's necessary, that is to say the least amount of force necessary to get them to cease to be a threat, then we're on the right track. What does this mean? Well, 20 odd years ago here in the UK, there was an interesting case of someone who broke into a farmhouse in the middle of the night to steal some stuff. The farmer woke up, grabbed his shotgun, went downstairs. The burglar tried to flee. As soon as he realized he wasn't alone in the house and the occupant was awake, he tried to flee. He tried to climb out of the window, and the farmer shot him in the back. Now, to make a long story short, this farmer went to prison for murder. And the reason why it was murder is because he shot a fleeing criminal in the back. that criminal, because he was fleeing, was not a threat to the farmer. The farmer was simply incredibly angry that someone would break into his house, rightly so, but then he allowed his anger to cloud his judgment, and he sought revenge for this guy coming in, and so he shot him, even though the chap was trying to escape and therefore presented no physical threat to him or his family. And the law takes a dim view of that sort of thing. Now, if on the other hand, the burglar was standing still and across the room and was unarmed, you still don't get to shoot him. You do get to tell him to stay put while I phone the police. If he tries to leave, you can potentially try to stop him, but not using deadly force. And if he stays put, again, there's no reason to shoot him. On the other hand, if he tries to flee, you could just let him go and just let the fingerprints he's left behind help the police catch him later on. Because he used an excessive amount of force, because he was shooting at someone whose back was turned and was therefore not an imminent threat. Now, what if he was armed? Well, that's a little different. Now, what I was taught in the police academy all those years ago, all those decades ago, was if you walk into a room and you have a suspect on the other side of the room with a knife, can you shoot him? Well, the first answer is no, because he's the other side of the room and therefore does not represent an imminent threat. If he goes to throw the knife at you, while he's in the process of throwing the knife, yes, you can shoot him because he is now an imminent threat, even though he's on the other side of the room, because he's planning on using his weapon as a projectile. If he charges you, then, of course, you may also open fire because he's an imminent threat. On the other hand, if we go back to that early one where he's throwing the knife at you, once he's thrown that knife, can you shoot him then? And the answer is no, because he's no longer an imminent threat. He's now disarmed himself. Obviously, if he's an opponent with a handgun or a rifle or a shotgun, slightly different situation because he may get a second shot in, and that would warrant you using your weapon in that circumstance. But notice how in the case of the chap who is throwing a knife, there is a brief window in which it is reasonable, legal, and appropriate to use deadly force. But outside of that window, either side of that window, it is not. This is what you need to get clear in your head, because if you are going to choose to use force, particularly, let's say, in a home invasion situation, and you are armed, it is your responsibility to use a level of force which is compliant with the law. That doesn't mean allowing yourself or any family member to become injured, but it does mean you don't just get to murder the guy because you're pissed off with him. There is a difference. And that's all the law is asking you to do. It's not asking you to not defend yourself. It's asking you to not murder anybody. I hope you found this interesting, and if you have any further questions, please feel free to ask in the comments, and I will happily answer any questions you may have. This is an important subject, and one which has led to some people feeling confused and thinking they're not allowed to defend themselves when in fact they absolutely are. If you found this interesting, please click like. Again, if you have any questions or experiences that you'd like to share, write them in the comments. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. And also consider sharing this video. It really helps the channel. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting, useful, and you have a good one. Till the next time. Bye then.